Hey, we are back with the House of Trauma podcast, and I am your favorite podcast host, Kiana Brienne. Now let's get into it. We are currently living in very difficult times. Okay? I think everybody can agree on that at this present moment. That we're living in difficult times. It's difficult financially, for certain. For some of us, it's difficult mentally. You may find difficulty in your spiritual life and even in your physical life. But overall, we're all collectively dealing with very difficult times. And when you are in difficult times, when you are navigating through uncertainty, it can be really hard to see the bright side of things. It can be really difficult to get through day-to-day life, right? And I'm no different. In my 29 years of life, I've seen things, I've endured things that potentially no one at this age or at any age should have endured throughout their lifetime. But still, I try to proceed through life with optimism, and I try to proceed with love and empathy and compassion for those around me, knowing what I know about my experiences within my own life. Now listen, I'm not perfect by far, not in any capacity, but I still try my hardest to do what's right and keep pushing on. And that's not always easy. And I feel like people similar to myself, so you may be listening to this and feeling as though you share these same qualities. And so people like us, we're often looked at as the strong friend or the one that doesn't have any problems, the one that can get through anything with little to no assistance. And that notion sometimes overshadows what the reality of the situation is. That we're not perfect beings. Nobody is so strong emotionally that they have the inability to crack. And I'm personally finding myself more and more lately almost slipping through the cracks. You all know that I place value here at the House of Trauma with being completely transparent and completely honest. So bear with me as I attempt to convey intelligently what it is that I'm feeling in a manner that you can understand, and for some of you, hopefully, you can relate. Let's continue. So I can think back to many times in my life where I sat and endured through very difficult situations, even though it was weighing on me heavy. And I'm like, just keep going, to the point where I'm like, I'm so close to the edge that any minor inconvenience can be what sends me over this cliff, right? There have been many times in my life, and I've always gotten through. So sometimes now, when I'm going through difficult situations, or in recent years when I'm going through difficult situations, I remember the words of one of my sisters, and she said, "You've gotten through way worse than this." And so when I'm faced with a difficult situation where I'm so close to the edge, I might just jump off and not even wait for that slight thing to push me off the cliff. I continuously tell myself, you've gotten through much worse than this. But now I'm at a place where I'm asking myself, how can everything in the past be much worse than the present? So it creates a little bit of confusion. And it's almost like it's my attempt to not face reality and kind of just keep navigating on autopilot. Because if I continue to believe that, yeah, you've gotten through way worse than this, then you might as well keep going. And I don't want it to be misunderstood that you shouldn't keep going, that there's not a bright side to everything, that you don't get through everything, because you do. We've already gotten through 100% of our worst days, right? And 100% of our best days, if we're talking about the present moment. But I would hate for anybody, including myself, to get in such a space where we're ignoring the reality of what's bothering us because of the notion on, it gets better. And while it does get better, it's important for us to still address the issues. And I personally have a bad habit of not fully addressing what's bothering me in the moment in an attempt to just kind of, again, like I said, like kind of autopilot through until it's no longer bothering me. And that kind of creates unresolved trauma. So essentially, while I'm pushing through without really stepping over the edge, it's kind of counterproductive because I'm not benefiting myself in any way. And I speak a lot about feeling your emotions intensely, like feeling those emotions for a while and then getting up and proceeding. And what I've come to realize when life is moving so fast and you're like a hamster on a hamster wheel and it's just going, and you don't see no end, that feeling your emotions to its full capacity is neglected, or pretty much neglected. Like maybe you don't do it at all, or maybe you only do it in a minor way. So a few months ago, I was just in a whirlwind of emotions, and I was crying and I was begging God. I'm just so tired. I just don't even know if I want to do this life anymore. Like I don't know what I'm doing, what direction I'm going, and I just don't want to do it. I just don't. Like, God, I'm tired. And I just remember I kept telling God I was tired, right? Now, I may have told this story before, but anywho, God gave me rest. Do you hear what I'm saying? I told God I was tired and God gave me rest. Now, that rest came with a cost. And in the beginning, when I had to pay the cost for the rest that I was receiving, I didn't understand what was going on. And it felt like more bad things were happening to me and not for me. But in my period of rest, once I got over the initial shock of everything that happened that led up to me being able to do nothing but rest, stay at home every day for 30 days. I'm just going to say 30 days. It could have been more or less. But once I got over the initial shock of everything that happened and I got the rest that I needed, in the midst of my resting period, I realized that this, in fact, was an answered prayer and a gift from God. Because I had no idea how much longer I could endure without receiving that rest before I was sent completely over the edge. Because I was not truly taking the time to deal with what it was that was bothering me, because I felt like I had to consistently go. So I begged for rest and I received rest. After that period, I started to feel better. I started to do better. I started to make better decisions, and I started to form better habits. And the reason I'm sharing this particular story from just a few months ago is because I find myself feeling like I'm in a similar space mentally where I just want rest. However, it's on a more intensified level. It's not that I want rest because life is going, and I'm so tired. I mean, it's that to a certain extent, but I find myself in a space where I just don't want to do anything to any extent. And I spoke about this a little bit in the spiritual warfare episode. And I know that this is a form of spiritual warfare to where I don't want to do anything. I don't want to be bothered with anything. And I almost feel like there's a heavy burden of emotions that's weighing me down even now in this moment as I'm speaking. There's a heavy burden of emotional, physical, and financial burden that is overpowering my ability to kind of keep going through life. And even with the notion that I've gotten through worse things than this, and I have, honestly and truly, it kind of doesn't help me continue to move forward, if that makes sense. I hope I'm not rambling. I swear there's a point to it all. So there's this song one of my friends sent me a while back. And it's called Cry by Corinne Hawthorne. And in the song, she says, it don't matter where you at, it'll be all right. But in the meantime, know that it's okay to cry. And the reason that those lyrics, that part in particular, really always strikes a chord with me is because I've had a friend before tell me, like, it's okay to cry. We all know the saying, it's okay to not be okay. But I've kind of, in an effort to put this perfect persona on, I have kind of built up this unconscious ideal that it's not okay to not be okay, especially in public. I remember telling my sister that I was really dealing with something heavy a while back. And I'm like, I'm literally fighting back tears while I'm at work, while I'm on the plane, while I was at the store, while I was doing this, while I was doing that. And she's like, girl, don't worry about those people. I was crying on the bus one day. Like, it's none of their fucking business. If you need to cry, you need to let it out. And I feel myself consistently holding back the tears and neglecting feeling my emotions fully. And if we continue not to feel our emotions fully, how can we ever get to the next phase of healing? And so here's the thing. I'm healthy. I'm wealthy in the eyes of the Lord. I am loved immensely. But I am sad. Some days I'm sad and I don't even know why. I can't pinpoint the exact thing that has disrupted my emotions for the day. I can't figure it out. But what I do know is that I'm just really sad. And I really don't want to communicate or be around other people, but the job that I have and the lifestyle that I live requires me to be in constant contact with other people, and I'm overstimulated and I'm overwhelmed. All these months later, I'm still dealing with the emotional impact on knowing that the woman who recklessly took my father's life gets to go home to her family every day. And my father will never, ever, ever have that opportunity again. And though his life was taken years ago, I feel like we just reopened the wound the day I had to go to court and look this monster in her face, knowing that when I walk out that door, she can walk out that door too. And that's heavy for me. Everyone knows that I hold my mom so close to me, so close to my heart in every way, because I don't know what I would do if I ever lost her too. And if I'm being 100% honest, my mom she's very sick. There's a lot of different things going on, and watching someone's health decline and being able to do nothing about it is something that I have no words to describe. So I'm dealing with that, and it weighs heavily on me. I have this new job in this new city, and it's a lot going on, and I'm trying to figure things out and figure out the next phase of my life. And as I transition yet again to relocate, and that within itself is a lot, emotionally, physically, financially. And so that weighs heavy on me, right? And I mentioned before that I am loved. I truly am loved. I can think of many people in my life who I feel like genuinely care about me. But maybe they don't always show it. And with everything going on in my personal life, it's easy to feel alone. Even knowing consciously that there's all these people around me, it's easy to feel alone, right? We can easily get to a space where we feel like we're in this battle alone. We're in this fight alone. And there's no one around that truly understands or can truly help us through, right? There's God, of course. But in a physical sense, when we're thinking about, all the people around us, we can easily get to that space. And there was another flight attendant the other day, and I was talking to her about, just slight struggles with the job. And she told me, there's so many people in this world, you should never feel like you're in this alone. And I was like, wow, this is a perfect stranger. I don't know this woman, and she doesn't know me, but she gave me those kind words, and she's right. There's so many people in this world. There's so many people around us, and you should never feel alone. You sometimes have allies, help, support from people who you don't even realize that God sent to provide a blessing in your life. But again, I understand how easily we're able to slip into the mindset and into the box that we're alone. Because I've been there. I am there. If I'm being 110% honest, I'm there right now in this space, and I have to keep reminding myself that there are people around me who are here to uplift me when I'm down. There are people here to uplift you when you're down. Don't be afraid to ask for help. People are always telling me don't be afraid to ask for help, but I'm such an independent person, and I've spent the bulk of my life and all of my adulthood doing everything all the time for myself with no help and very little assistance, that when I get to a place where I need to ask for help, I'm just kind of like, okay, probably not going to do that, because then that puts me in a vulnerable state. It puts me in a vulnerable place, and it opens up the door for rejection, which I don't do well with. Okay, who's with me on that? But I have to remember, my God, I have to remember God's track record. Because when I begged God for rest, and God gave it to me in a form that looked a little shaky in the beginning, but I later came to realize was a blessing in disguise. So when we ask God for these things, because it's important to always turn to God, right? And that's the main way to combat the spiritual warfare. Because yes, we're back on that. This is kind of like a part 2. Okay. Because the spiritual warfare is still on the heavy, high attack. So sometimes when we ask God for something, it may not just fall out the sky. God may send someone to be a blessing to you in that moment because you asked. So you received. So neglecting to turn to the people and the resources around you will only hinder you and sometimes block your blessing. There is no telling how many times I potentially blocked my blessing because I was afraid to ask for help, to ask for assistance. When I moved out of my apartment last year, And before I did, I should say, I was afraid to ask my stepmom if I could move back in with her because of my fear of rejection. But after me and her had a conversation and she gave me kind words and of course said that I could, I realized that I had nothing to be afraid of. But because I have always had my own place, it's weird to me to ask someone else if I can come live with them. Even though for years and years and years, honestly, since I've had my first apartment, so many people in my family have asked to come live with me and I opened my door to them. So now that I needed in that moment, that assistance, I was afraid that the favor would not be returned. So again, I have to remind myself that there is people around me who love me and genuinely want me to do well. And closed mouths don't get fed. And sometimes you have to ask. And if the answer is no, then we keep moving forward. We can't live in a constant state of fear. And we can't think that the people around us who love us are not here to aid us. And on the contrary, there have been times in my life where the same people who I lend a helping hand to didn't help me. So maybe it stems from that, actually, as we continue to unpack. There have been times in my life where I've given my last dollar, the clothes off my back, provided a roof over someone's head. And then when it was time to return the favor to me, I was met with no compassion, no empathy, and nothing to help me in return. And those kind of emotional wounds stick with you, and it leads us to be in a space where we're afraid to ask for help. And I'm always taking care of other people. So when I feel that no one's there for me, that's when the rage comes out, because how dare you not be there for me when I was there for you? How dare you not help me when I'm down, even though I picked you up and put you on my back when you were down? I never, never, never forget how somebody made me feel when I felt like I was at my lowest or just a low point in life in general. I will never forget that. And I know that everyone's not like that, but I've been burned enough to know that those people do exist. And so that, combined with being independent for a majority of my life, kind of stops me from asking for help in many moments. And I think because I don't ask for help a lot, right? And I'm usually the helper and not the helpee, because it always appears that I kind of have my shit together, at least a little bit, that it goes over people's heads when I'm in need. One time I tried to have a conversation with one of my sisters, and I was like, I'm just going through a lot right now. And me and my sister, we joke a lot. Me and this sister in particular, we joke a lot. This wasn't a joke, though. I said, I'm just going through a lot right now. And she's like, girl, you ain't going through nothing. And I'm like, no, seriously, like, it's really a lot on my plate. And I'm literally fighting back tears as I'm even saying this to her. And she's just steady, like, dismissing me, like, you're fine, nothing's going on, you'll be okay, you know, whatever. And then I'm like, you know what? You're right, everything's fine, goodbye. And I got off the phone because I felt like my emotions were ignored. My feelings were dismissed. And my overall emotional well-being wasn't a priority for her. And, you know, maybe it shouldn't be. My emotional well-being shouldn't be a priority for anybody but myself. But however, where the real hurt and pain came from is I'm always an emotional dumping ground for her problems. And the one day I really needed a friend, I was disregarded. And again, those type of inflictions prevent me from growing in my vulnerability. It prevents me from ever reaching out and asking for assistance, or even opening up the door to let people know, like, hey, I'm not okay. And I had a conversation during a different incident with another one of my sisters, and she's like, oh, it's okay. You always get through it. You'll be fine. But what if, just what if this one time I'm not okay and I can't be the strong friend and I can't have everybody's back right now because I need to have my own? When you're the one who people always come to for help, when you're the one always solving everybody's problems, your problems almost become irrelevant or non-existent, at least in the eyes of others. And I said all that to say, the pile on of other people's burdens lead to you neglecting your own issues, which leads to you not feeling your emotions intensely, which prevents you from fully healing, which builds onto your trauma and emotional wounds, which results in you being in a present moment where you're fighting a battle that you're not even sure what it is. It leads you to feeling sad and disconnected, and builds on to a level of depression that you didn't see coming. We are living in heavy, heavy times right now. Emotionally, financially, spiritually, physically. Everything is heavy. Everything is hard. And we're all fighting our own battles. So I encourage you to not neglect your feelings like I have. Because that neglect progresses. I encourage you to put on the full armor of God and start fighting these battles in the spirit so that they can show up in the flesh. Won and overcome. The truth is, it's okay to not be okay. It's okay to feel sad and to feel down. It's okay to not want to get out of bed in the morning. It's okay to ask for help if you need it. It's okay to be vulnerable and to lean on the people who you know love you and only want the best for you. It's not okay to let your emotions burden you. It's not okay to continue to go through life alone when there's so many people in this world. It's not okay to neglect your mental and physical health. If I'm speaking for myself in this moment, I've come to the realization that I'm not okay, and that's okay. Because my God is a good God, and He always gives me rest and releases me from my burdens just when I need it the most. You, my friend, have to be real with yourself and be honest with where you are in this moment in your life. So I ask you, as someone who loves you and only wants the best for you, are you okay? This is the House of Trauma podcast. It's me, your favorite podcast host, Kiana Bree, and I'll leave you with my favorite scripture of all time,
Psalms chapter 30, verse 5. Weeping may endure for the night, but joy come in the morning. I love you to the moon and back. I'll see you on our next episode.